ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। ॐ सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्। श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करम्। समस्तजनकल्याणे निरतं करुणामयं नमामि चिन्मयं देवं सद्गुरुं ब्रह्मविद्वरम्। सर्ववेदान्तसिद्धान्त गोचरं तमगोचरं गोविन्दं परमानन्दं सद्गुरुं प्रणतोऽस्म्यहम्। So the ninth verse that we saw last time said Uddharedatmana Atmanam Magnam Samsara Varidho. One must lift oneself by oneself, drowning as though one is in this ocean of samsara. Yoga Rudhatva Masadhya. One should prepare oneself for the state of contemplation and meditation. And we saw the three preparations that were spoken of. No temptation towards the sense objects, no restlessness to work, and no fanciful imaginations. When such a mind contemplates steadily, Samyak Darshana Nishtaya, one will get abidance through steady contemplation, and one will be able to have the vision of the self. So in this samsara sagar, it is said that there are 5 oceans, 5 waves. The 5 waves of this samsara sagar are, they lash the individual. So the first wave is avidya. The second wave is asmita, the feeling of I in the body. The third wave is klesha, agitations of the mind, misery. Fourth wave is raga and dvesha. Together they are the fourth wave, attachment and aversions. And the fifth wave is abhinivesha, the fear of death. This is there in the Yoga Shastra also. 5. They call it as Pancha Klesha also. So these 5 waves, as though lash the person and the person keeps drowning. Magnam samsara varidhav. Delusion, moha, is a whirlpool in this ocean. Attachment to wealth, people, objects, these are like the aquatic monsters. And passion is the net in which one can be trapped. So this is the description that is given just to make a person understand that how intense is this bondage and how one is drowning, and one should wake up to realize this fact that one is drowning in the ocean of samsara, afflicted by all these. So the next verse he says, Sanyasya sarva karmani bhava bandha vimuktaye. Having given up all activities, meaning this is at the time of contemplation, having given up all the activities of the body and the senses. One withdraws from the senses, from the bodily actions, one is sitting quietly. And also at the time of when one is not contemplating, having given up all selfish desire prompted activities, working with the spirit of dedication and selflessness. Sanyasya sarva karmani. Bhava bandha vimuktaye. With the intense desire that I want to be free from this bondage of samsara. So the word bhava means to become. The constant thirst to become something, because one's nature is infinite and one does not know that one's nature is infinite. So there is a constant need to become something else, because fulfillment one doesn't experience no matter what one achieves or what one becomes. Till one doesn't come to realize one's infinite nature, this thirst to become will continue. So a person who has analyzed, understood that until the experience of the self doesn't happen, no matter how great I become or how sattvic I become, I still am a limited jiva. So bhava bandha vimuktaye means the craving to become something has to go. Someone may ask that you are also trying to become the self. No, we are not trying to become the self. We are trying to come back to being the self that we are. Like an actor who is playing the role. In the role, he wants to become better and better and better. Suppose he's a beggar. Now he wants to become more rich. He wants to have his basic needs. Then he wants to become more rich, then more famous. That is becoming. But when he says that, no, I am not this actor at all. I'm not this role at all. I am an actor. Then the person comes back to being. And hence here it is bhava bandha vimukti. We are not trying to become the self. We are trying to come back to who we are. Right now we are in a state where we are out of what we are. So he says here bhava bandha vimukti. One has to strive to free oneself from this thirst to become. And then yatyatam panditai dhiraihi. One should strive. A pandit and a dhira. So Pandit means who? Today we think Pandit means anybody who is a pujari or somebody who has tonsured the head, has a choti, so who does some rituals. But actually the word Pandit has a very deep meaning. Pandit means one who is intellect is very clear that my nature is the self. Panda means Atma Vishaya Buddhihi. That's the meaning of the word Panda. Panda Atma Vishaya Buddhihi Yasya Sa Panditaha. Shankaracharya ji writes this in his commentary on the Gita. So that person who has studied the scriptures and now he knows intellectually at least that my nature is the self. And is a Dhira Purusha. So this Pandit is an intellectual quality where one has understood that my nature is the self, I am not the body. But he has to contemplate and realize the truth. Then Dhira. Dhira is a quality, again, equanimity of the mind and intellect. The Gita Bhagavan says, Sama dukkha sukham dhiram saha amritatvaya kalpate. A person who is very balanced, equanimous in all pairs of opposites, sama dukkha sukham, doesn't get extremely elated in happiness, in success, doesn't get depressed in failure, pleasure and pain, heat and cold, maintains the balance. Only such a person can contemplate steadily. So one meaning of dhira is one who remains undisturbed. Does it mean that one will become like a vegetable, doesn't respond at all, doesn't feel elation, doesn't feel sad? Not like that. One is, the impact of that moment may be there, but the person is not carried away by that flow. The person continues to remain in the inner balance. And especially at the time of contemplation, the pairs of opposites don't affect the person through memories. Mind doesn't go to some pleasurable memory, some happy memory, doesn't remember some sad or depressed kind of a memory. Steadily is able to contemplate. So that quality is the quality of the mind, dhira. So he says, yatyata, one has to put hard effort. A lot of effort is required to keep the mind steadily on the self. For that, the knowledge of the self is required, which is indicated by Pandit, and equanimity of the mind and intellect is required, which is indicated by Dhira. Such a person, Atma Abhyasa Upasthitaihi, will know the self through Atma Abhyas. Atma Abhyas is Shravan, Manan, Nididhyasa. Listen to the truth, reflect upon it, and then contemplate. Such a Atma Abhyas, when a person is doing, then this person will become free from bondage. Now he comes to the next verse, where he reasserts what he had said earlier about the place of work in our life. 11th verse says, Chittasya shuddhaye karma natu vastu upalabdhaye vastu siddhir vicharena nakinchit karma kotibhihi. So he says, Chittasya shuddhaye karma. This is a line that is worth memorizing and worth reminding ourselves again and again. That why do I act in this world? There are various motivations to act. Sometimes one acts to fulfill the basic needs. Food, clothing, shelter, one has to fend for oneself, survival. So in the beginning one acts for that. Basic needs must be fulfilled. Then one acts because one wants to gain something. Maybe wealth, maybe position, maybe power, anything. Sometimes one acts because one wants to manifest one's potential, create something of value, become successful, famous, leave an impact. Sometimes one acts because one wants to make a difference to the whole society, leave the world a better place. So, pleasure, power, prestige, position, any of these can be the motivations to act. But all of us know that ultimately through all these, what we want is permanent happiness. That permanent happiness can come only when there is purity of mind. Because permanent happiness is my nature even now, but right now I'm not realizing it because the mind is not pure enough. So to purify the mind is the main purpose of work. Chittasya shuddhaye karma. And by purity of mind, what do we mean? The mind which is inspired, the mind which is positive, the mind which is not selfish, but which is selfless, has a broad vision, and is very clear about the goal, that my goal is to realize the absolute truth, and the same truth pervades the hearts of everybody. So I'm here to serve, and through that service, I'm here to make my mind selfless. So this purity of mind does not make me go away from my duties, is not to say that stop pursuing wealth or prosperity or success or fame. One may continue to do that, but the mind is very clear. This is not the goal, number one. Number two, this is not for I, this is for maybe the family, for the country, for the society. I dedicate. Then that mind will continue to do what it has to do, will continue to be expressive of its potential, achieve great things, but the mind will be very light. The ego pressure will not be there. There is no dependency that if I become successful, I feel worthy. All this is purity of mind. Where one does great work, if you see Vivekanand ji or Ramakrishna or Gurudev Swami Chinmayanand ji, Eknath Ranade, there are so many such people. They have achieved great things in life, but no ego pressure, because they did not do it only for I. They did it for the society. They did it for a higher purpose. So, Chittasya Shuddhaye Karma. If I remember this very well, that my work, the objective of my work is to purify the mind. Every day as I keep working, is my ego pressure reducing? Is my demand for self-importance reducing? Do I feel the pressure that people should praise me, appreciate me? And if they don't do that, do I feel very disappointed? Do I feel that if nobody is praising me, why should I do this work? Then I'm not doing work for the sake of work. I'm doing work for the sake of the results. If I love the very work I'm doing, and in that I dedicate it to a higher cause, then I'm free from all the dependencies on the result, on the appreciation, on what people think about me. That mind is a very light mind. Such a mind can soar in contemplation. So, chittasya shuddhaye karma. Any karma it is, even a spiritual karma of prayer, of rituals, of fast, any of the karmas, by themselves they will not take us to the truth. Natu vastu upalabdhaye. Karma is a means to purify the mind. By any amount of karma, one will not get the knowledge of the self. That we had seen earlier also. It was said earlier that not by doing so many rituals, not by, worshipping, not by so many pranayams, one will get this knowledge. One will get this state of self. Those are all preparatory means. So, chittasya shuddhaye karma nato vastu upalabdhaye. Then how will I experience the self? Vastu siddhir vicharena. By thinking clearly, by reflecting and contemplating, vastu siddhi. Vastu here means the self. Vastu here doesn't mean an object. Vastu here means the self. So vastu siddhir vicharena, by constantly thinking clearly, steadily, dropping the false identification that I am the body. Because the problem is ignorance. Problem is not that I am not the self and through action I have to create the self. Action only can create something which is not existing right now. Or it can sustain what is already created. So action can do only this, and in time the result of that action will perish. So no amount of karma that I do will ever get me the state of permanent bliss. So if I know this very well, I will not become a workaholic. I will not run behind action with the false hope that it will give me permanent happiness. It can give pleasure, it can give some emotional gratification. But a person who is very clear about it, all these are temporary and I am not seeking the temporary, then the person uses action only to prepare oneself. So the work-life balance that has to be there, that will come automatically. One may be having goals, targets, but one is not carried away by uncontrolled ambition. One has an ambition or one has a goal that by this time I want to achieve this. But one doesn't do that at the cost of one's spiritual growth or balance of life, spending time with family, spending time with one's own, fitness, prayer, quietude, study, all that. Because intellectually, the picture is very clear to the person that work has a specific place in life. Work cannot become life. Maybe at some point in our life, each one of us would have gone through that phase, or maybe going through that phase now also. But it is a good reminder to oneself to say that chittasya shuddhaye karma. My work is to purify my mind. Is my work making my mind quieter, or is it disturbing me more and more? If it is agitating me more and more, there is some attachment to my work, or some attachment to the result, or some attachment to the result of the result. That when I get that particular result, I will get, somebody will praise me, or I will feel more worthy, or I will become more popular. The result of the result. Some attachment is there to any of these. Work is to make me go away from all these attachments. Love the very work I am doing, dedicated to the Lord. That purifies the mind. So chittasya shuddhaye karma, natu vastu upalabdhaye. So in Vedanta we say that there are three knots of the heart. Bondage is defined technically as Hridaya Granthi, three knots of the heart. Ignorance, desire, and karma. Action. Avidya, kama, karma. These are called three knots of the heart. We saw in that ignorance cycle. That was detailed. This is in brief. So avidya leads to desires. Desire leads to action. Action gives rise to further vasanas, which further strengthen the desires. And the cycle goes on. So the effect of avidya is desire. The effect of desire is karma. Karma is the secondary effect. The secondary effect cannot remove the primary cause. No amount of action will remove ignorance, because action and ignorance are not opposed to each other. Opposite of ignorance is only knowledge. And also being the grosser, karma is grosser than ignorance. The grosser cannot remove the subtler. Ignorance is the subtlest. So no amount of action will help me to reduce ignorance. By action here we mean the action which produces a temporary result. Then someone may ask, but what about contemplation, study, all that also is action. No doubt that is also an action. But that action is not producing something, that action is removing something. That's the beauty of that action. Study, reflection, contemplation is not to produce the self, or it is not to produce some tangible result outside. It is to remove the false notion and the false identification. It is like the gold ore is there. That gold ore is impure. When it is put in the fire is not producing the shine of the gold. The fire is removing the dirt. And once the dirt is removed completely, the gold shines. So the action of study, reflection, and meditation is not like any other action. That's why the word here uses vicharena, by steady thinking. No, but is not the result of that thinking also temporary? So the result of the thinking, if it is a tangible product, is temporary. But the result of this thinking is removal of ignorance. And when it is done steadily, that's why the abidance is important. Earlier the word used was samyak darshana nishtaya. Till the nishtha doesn't happen that I am pure consciousness, I am not the body. This subtler aspect of contemplation has to be continued. So in that sense, study, reflection, contemplation also is karma. But in this Vedantic terminology, that is not included in the part of karma. That is included in the part of nididhyasana, or the direct means of self-knowledge, which is capable of removing ignorance. The other means is producing the purity of mind. So, karma yoga, bhakti, jnana. Now in this, that question was earlier there, that study, reflection and meditation, how is it a part of preparation? So in Jnana Yoga, how is a Jnana Yoga preparatory? Jnana Yoga is preparatory only in the qualifications. Vivek, Vairagya, Chatka Sampati, Mukshutvam, go to the teacher. That is the preparatory part. Same way in Bhakti Yoga also, there is a preparatory part, and then comes the last part, which is surrender to the Lord and Bhagavan blesses the devotee with knowledge. That last part is not a part of Bhakti Yoga's preparation. Same way in Jnana Yoga also, the preparation is all this, Vivek, Vairagya, that will come ahead. The fourfold qualifications, go to the teacher, ask the right questions, and when the knowledge is given, then listen, reflect and contemplate. That is a direct means to remove ignorance. So one is removal, one is producing. Karma can produce purity of mind and make me ready for steady contemplations. Through steady contemplation, ignorance can be removed. So this is what has to be done. Chittasya shuddhaye karma vastu siddhir vicharena. Na kinchit karma kotivi. No amount of hundreds and thousands of actions will remove ignorance. It can give me purity of mind. Hence here he says, Chittasya shuddhaye karma. Like Gurudev always used to give the example of non-apprehension and misapprehension. So when I don't see something as it is, and I see it as something else, the non-apprehension of the rope makes me misapprehend the snake. No amount of action of beating the snake, trying to kill the snake, trying to push the snake is going to make me realize the truth. All I have to do is put the torch on and see that it was not the snake. Because I misunderstood that to be the snake. Now I have fear that I am going to die. And even the impact of that fear would be that the whole body will have responses, reactions. Person may even feel that my blood is getting poisoned, I'm going to die. Froth can start coming out of the mouth. The mind can imagine so many things. But if the person puts the torch and sees clearly that, oh, this was just a rope, that knowledge frees the person. No amount of action will make that person free. Hence, that's the example that he gives here. The next verse is actually that example. Samyak vicharata siddha rajju tattvavadharana bhrantyodita mahasarpa bhaya dukkha vinashini. So samyak vicharata siddha, only by clarity of thinking, one will be able to see that it is a rope and it is not a snake. Why? Because bhrantya urita mahasarpa, by delusion, what is being seen as the snake, and the resultant bhaya dukkha, fear and sorrow, these can be destroyed only by seeing clearly that it is actually not a snake, it is a rope. So when a person has that clarity that this is the rope, till now one was thinking this is the snake and the snake has bit me, and so there is a fear, there is a sorrow, there is thinking that I am going to die, what will happen to my family, all those things the mind is projecting. When the person puts on the torch and sees, oh, this is only a snake, a rope, all the fear goes in one shot. All sorrow, everything gone. So Gurudev used to call this as non-apprehension and misapprehension. Bhrantya udita is the misapprehension. And when I see Rajju as the sarpa, that is a non-apprehension. So not to see the rope is the non-apprehension. To see it as the snake is the misapprehension. What we are trying to do is only remove the effects of misapprehension. Not even remove the misapprehension. So for example, not to know that I am the self is the non-apprehension. To know that I am the body, to feel that I am this jiva, that is the misapprehension. Now once I am identified with this jiva, this body, now I have attachments, aversions, ambition, dependency. So there is fear, there is anger, there is stress, there is worry, there is anxiety, all these. These are the effects of misapprehension. What we are trying to do is only remove the effect of misapprehension. So try to become more quieter, try to reduce the stress levels, try to control the anxiety. And no doubt that may be required, and some amount of some security in life, financial security in life, emotional satisfaction in life can help to remove these to a certain extent. But this will manifest in some other form. Because it's the effect of the effect. It's the effect of not knowing myself. Is I think myself as the body, as the limited jiva, and then the effect of that is fear, anger, stress, worry, tension, anxiety, all these. Relief methods can only help me to remove some of these. But the basic cause that I am not the body, that ignorance of the self, that has not got removed. Hence he says, Samyak Vicharata Siddha. Only through steady contemplation will this non-apprehension go. So freedom in Vedanta is not freedom from action. Gurudev said moksha is not freedom from action, moksha is freedom in action. Meaning if I use action to purify my mind, that is one level of freedom in action. That I am free from psychological dependency on the results, on the result of the result, on the way to do the action. And as I use this purity of mind to contemplate, I realize that actually I am not the doer. I am the pure consciousness, akarta, abhokta. That person has become free from doership. So then even if karma is happening, there is no bondage in that. Why? Because there is no sense of doership. Why there is no doership? Because ignorance is destroyed. As infinite permanent consciousness, pure bliss, there is nothing to do. One has reached the state of fulfillment. So far one was acting for happiness. Action was being used to get happiness. Now one is acting out of happiness. So action may still happen, like we see so many dynamic masters. It will not stop the action, but the whole attitude is different. No more one is acting as a limited entity. One is acting, abiding in the self as pure bliss. One is completely secure. One has nothing to gain from the world, nothing to lose. That person is the most successful person. So here he says this, that only through steady contemplation this is possible. The seeker must free oneself from ignorance. That is the freedom. To realize that I was never bound. To realize that my nature is pure consciousness. When a person wakes up from this dream, the person realizes, oh, I am the waker. Nothing actually happened to me. That is the freedom. So the waker was always free, lying on the bed. Temporarily the waker forgot himself and deluded oneself to think I am the dream character and felt as though bound by the dream world. When a person has woken up from the dream, person realizes oh, nothing happened to him. Same example here. When a person sees that there is no snake, one is freed. Otherwise, one is trying to find a cure. Now the snake has bit me, get some, what is it called? Anti-poison medicine, anti-venom. Get some medicine, get some injection. Because one thinks that that is real. So when we come to Vedanta, that's why many people don't come to Vedanta. It is not to belittle their suffering or their sorrow or to say that what you are going through is not even existing. You are deluding yourself. It is not to become unsympathetic. But it is at one point to make that person realize that inquire into the root cause. No doubt one helps. That's why Chittasya Shuddhaye Karma. That will help to remove stress, reduce anxiety, reduce worries. And with such a mind only I can inquire into the root cause. If I'm not doing this Chittasya Shuddhaye Karma and I'm constantly trying to just read Vedanta and try to say that, okay, I am the self, it will not work. Because the purity of mind is the requirement for inquiry and steady contemplation. The mind will not be able to steadily contemplate if there is no purity of mind. So there is no escape from that. I have to handle the effect of the effect, that is karma. I have to handle fear, stress, worries, anxiety through this dedicated karma. But I should know that that is not going to produce the result of the self. It is a means. And so let the mind not become habituated to so much of action that it leaves out contemplation, leaves out meditation. We have to consciously train the mind to keep the complete picture, to keep the macro picture in the mind, that what is the goal. And work is a means to purify the mind to reach that goal. So while I am working, I also do simultaneously study of Vedanta as well as some upasana, whereby I make the mind quiet, I meditate for some time in a day, do some mantra japa. So work through the dedicated attitude through the day, spend some time in japa or any such upasana, maybe prayer, maybe bhajans, maybe any visualization, any upasana which will make me single point. And study for some time in a day this knowledge of the self or even the knowledge which will make my mind stronger. Study the scriptures. That way, the balance of life when it is there, slowly, slowly, as the purity increases, single pointedness increases, then the steady contemplation also one can do. Without the first two, without purifying the mind, making the mind single pointed, it is not possible to know the self. And any amount of scriptural books we may study, it will only be more intellectual information. Assimilation will not happen. Hence, both are very crucial, preparation as well as study of the self. So now he continues further. See, he is emphasizing so much on vichar because our focus in life is most of the time on action, on doing something. But when we come to Vedanta, to remove the root cause, steady contemplation and thinking is very important. So he goes on emphasizing this for a certain number of verses. So in the 13th verse also he continues that chain of thought. Arthasya nishchayo drishtaha vicharena hitoktitaha nasnane nanadanena pranayamashate nava. So the word artha here again means the self. It does not mean desire or wealth. Arthasya nishchayo drishtaha. The realization of the self is seen by contemplation, vicharena. On what? Contemplation on what is said by the teacher. Hitoktitaha. Hitoktita, one simple meaning of hitoktita is somebody who is desiring our welfare. Specifically in this context, it means the teacher from whom I hear about the self-knowledge. So when a teacher who is established in the truth as well as well-versed in the scripture gives this knowledge, the knowledge of oneness of the individual and the supreme, that knowledge I must contemplate upon. So the importance of the teacher, again he brings it out here, that listen to the teacher about the Mahavakya, about the identity of Jiva and the Supreme, and contemplate on that, reflect and contemplate. Arthasya nishchayo drishtaha vicharena hitoktitaha. So one meaning of hitoktita is somebody who is interested in one's well-being. The teacher is the one who is interested in the well-being of the student. Shankaracharya ji writes a very, very beautiful line in Mundaka Upanishad commentary. He says that the love in the heart of a teacher for the student is like the love of the parents for the child. Just imagine how much the parent loves a child. In one birth, if a parent loves the child so much, imagine the love of thousands of parents in thousands of births. He says all that love put together also cannot compare to the love that the teacher has for the student. So the teacher has the most selfless love for the student, where the teacher doesn't want anything from the student. Teacher himself is established, herself is established in the truth. But with lot of love and compassion, the teacher is trying to wake up the student also, especially a student who is deserving and who has come with the preparation and seeking the self-knowledge. So he says the love in the heart of the teacher is equal to the love of the parents of thousands of births. Such a person is called Hitoktita. That's the second meaning. And third meaning is Hita Uktita means, Hita literally means our own self. What is closest to me, but which has got covered. So the self is called Hitatama in the Upanishads, that's the word for the self. So Hitoktita means a person who brings me to that which is closest to me, which is my own true self, which is me actually. That person through the Upadesh brings me closest to the self, which is right now covered. That self which is covered, which is my nature. The teacher who brings me closer to that. Such a teacher's words I must contemplate. Vicharena hitoktita. Na snanena. The same point here again. Not by taking many dips. So snana here can refer to the dips in the holy rivers. So many times one goes to Gangaji, one takes a dip there. No doubt it is a very sacred act and one should do it, but it is a preparatory means. So one takes a dip in Gangaji, one takes a resolve that no matter what I have been till yesterday, from today I become a different person. So when one actually goes to a Tirtha Yatra, when one takes a dip in the rivers, one is supposed to drop something. And drop what? Drop that which is a hindrance in my evolution. Not that, I don't like Karela, so I say I drop the Karela, I will not eat Karela anymore. That is of no use. What should I drop? Some attachment, some thought pattern, some habit which I am stuck up in and I know it is not good for me. I have to drop that. And say that, I am not able to drop it by my effort. I invoke the divine grace of Mother Ganga. Please purify my mind. Help me to overcome this negativity. One drops. So the snana will purify only when we do it like this. Snana doesn't purify by simply taking a dip. So many people do that. That may have its own little bit of punya karma. There is no doubt in that. But the real purification happens only when there is this clarity. When a person understands, otherwise even a buffalo is taking bath every day in that. Purity of mind comes when the feeling is there, the bhav is there, that this is Gangaji. She is purest of the pure. For Tapovan Maharaj, who is the guru of our Puja Gurudev Swami Chinmayananji, he used to say that Ganga is Brahman in liquid form. He used to see that this is the Supreme Lord manifesting in his liquid form. So the bhav is what purifies. So when I go to Gangaji, when I take a dip there, I feel the bhav that this is Bhagwan himself. Mother Ganga is flowing here. What compassion that from the mountains comes down to the plains and serves millions of people, goes through so much of trouble, overcoming so many obstacles, barriers, such a long distance it travels, ultimately goes to Ganga Sagar, merges with the ocean. But through the journey, how many millions of people are benefited? This Gangaji is not to be considered as just some water which is flowing. The purity of mind comes when I consider that she is divine and she is symbolic of the flow of knowledge, of devotion, of service. So to invoke that bhav, it is said she flows from the feet of Vishnu into the locks of Lord Shiva and then comes down on the earth, flows through Haridwar, Rishikesh, all these places. So with the bhav that Mother Ganga, may her grace be with me, may she purify me and may she help me to overcome my negativity. With that bhav, when I take a dip and take a resolve not to repeat the past mistakes. It is not that by doing some snan, my sins will get removed. And now I have a fresh opportunity to start new things. It is not like that. Karma, when it has to come, the result of karma will come. Oh, but then what is the point of dipping in Gangaji? The point is, I am a different person now. So when the results come, I will deal with them in dignity, and I will not repeat that behavior again. That is how one changes. One is repentant, one takes a dip, one takes a resolve that I want to transform. That is what purifies the mind, not a simple just a snan. Even when Kumbh Mela happens, lakhs of people go, and in the particular day, there is an astrological significance of that day, and they will take a snan, they will do the snan on that day. So yes, there will be some physical benefit, some mental benefit which will happen at that point in time because of the arrangements of the planets and the effect of the planets on the earth and the effect of all that on our mind. It will have some positive influence, there is no doubt. But real snan is what? At those times, if the mind is able to withdraw, steadily contemplate on the self in that Ganga of steady contemplation, or in that Prayag of steady contemplation, one gets purified. One can even realize the self. So one Ganga, Yamuna, Saraswati is the physical river which is flowing. The other is in Kumbh Mela, there are so many saints there. It is like a confluence of all different paths. So seeker must take a dip in the Ganga of satsang happening there. So many different Mahatmas are there. They are doing satsang there. And the knowledge is flowing there. Take a dip in that knowledge. That will purify. So snan can purify. Then dana. Dana also will purify the mind. Because when I do dan, I'm sharing the abundance that I have. At one level, whatever I have in abundance, I share that. At other level, even if I don't have, whatever I have, I learn to share. So the person gets rid of possessiveness, the feeling of this is mine. I have created this with my hard work. One says that I am a product of the totality. If I'm alive, I'm able to do something today, it's the result of the totality. The whole universe has to be there to make me who I am. For me to be existing also, the whole universe has to be. And every moment the universe is contributing to my survival and my existence. So I give not out of a sense of vanity. I give because that's the rhythm of the universe. Everything in this world gives. A very beautiful Subhashita says, Paropakaraya phalanti vrikshaha. The fruits, the trees bear fruits, not for themselves, they bear fruits for others. Paropakaraya vahanti nadyaha. The rivers flow not for themselves, they flow for others. Paropakaraya duhanti gavaha. The cows give milk for the sake of others. Paropakarartham idam shariram. This body is made for service of the people. So when a person understands this very well, that the rhythm of the whole universe is to give. Bhagavan says that in the 3rd chapter of the Gita. Saha yajna praja srishtva. He created this whole creation in the spirit of yajna. In the spirit of giving, sharing, selflessness. So I do dan because what I have got is from the society. I am a product of that society. I give it back to the society. So my possessiveness has to go. If I cannot give up the things, the wealth, my talent, the resources, the time, if I can't share that, if I'm so attached to these, how will I give up the ego? The ego is the dearest to me. How will I drop that ego? How will I surrender? So Dan helps to drop minus. Slowly, slowly when minus goes, then only the I also will go. So Dan also purifies. And then pranayam. Pranayam is not controlling the breath, that is swasayam. That may be a part of pranayam, no doubt. But pranayam is to control the physiological functions of the body, so that the prana shakti is utilized well, so that the prana shakti helps us in steady contemplation. And this pranayam is that which helps to withdraw. In Yoga Shastra, you have the next step of pranayam is pratyahar, withdrawal. Yam, niyam, asan, pranayam, pratyahar. So each one is supposed to lead to the other. Dharana, dhyan, samadhi, 8 steps. So yam must lead to niyam, niyam must lead to asan, asan must lead to pranayam. When pranayam is done, one is ready for withdrawal because the breath is regulated, all the other physiological functions are getting controlled. So the person will not have yawning, the person will not have sneezing, person will not have, in the state of withdrawal, person doesn't go through any of these. Digestion, assimilation, no problem in the body. So that person's body and the mind and the senses are ready to withdraw. So pratyahar. Then concentration on a support system. Then contemplation, dhyan, samadhi. So again, pranayam is a preparatory means. So snan, dhan and pranayam, all the three are very important to purify the mind. They can be done by different people by different times. And it has its own impact on the body and on the mind. But he says, shatenava, even hundreds of pranayams one may do, thousands of pranayams one may do, lots of tirtha yatras and dipping in the sacred rivers one may do. All this will purify the mind. Do charity in large quantity can help only to purify the mind. So once I am very clear that yes, these are all important, but they have a particular place. I am not getting carried away by the means, thinking that that is the ultimate, nor is it that I ignore the study, reflection and meditation. So the balance is struck very well. And this completes the 5th section. The next section starts is about the adhikari, that who is a qualified student, and now the qualifications of the student will come up. So for today we will stop here. Anybody has any questions, you are welcome to ask. Yes.
Swamiji, can you elaborate a little bit more on the third meaning of hitoktitaha when you spoke about the self?
Yeah. So third meaning of hitoktita is the self is indicated as hitatama, that which is, the superlative degree, like you have positive, comparative and superlative, the good, better and best. So hita, hitatara, hitatama. So the best, what is the best in me is the self. So the word hitatama is to indicate the self, which is my true nature, which is the best. The teacher who takes me closest to that, who introduces me to that self, that teacher also is called Hita. So the teacher with the attitude of supreme love and compassion takes me closest to the self, which is Hitatama. And so I should contemplate on the words of such a teacher, Vicharena Hitoktitaha. That's what it means.
Okay, Swamiji, thanks. And here throughout when Vicharena is mentioned, it is referring to contemplation.
Contemplation. So, and by implication, it also means the two previous sadhanas, reflection and listening.
Oh.
Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Shri Guru